Hi, Charles. Hi, Rebecca.
Hello.
Oh, thank you for being here together and sharing your experiences going through the In, Out, and Through program together. Let's start with an introduction. Please tell us a little bit about who you are and where you're at in your family building journey.
You wanna go?
Nice.
Okay. Charles, I'm a first-time parent to a 3-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old son named Isaura and Naeem. And we're just taking our journey one day at a time and as lovingly as we can and embracing, our children's personalities and everything that comes with them, to the fullest.
Yeah, I love when they pop up on screen during our Wednesday classes.
Mhm.
Beautiful personalities all around.
Yeah, they love to be in part of the group and engage with the group. So,
And we love them. Yes. Yes. Thank you, Charles.
of course.
I'm Rebecca, and I am Naeem and Issa's mother. And yeah, I I never expected that motherhood would have such a deep impact on my identity.
Hmm.
And so that's been really interesting to me.
Oh, I'm sure we'll get to that in a little bit as we unpack things together. Yeah. Hmm. Thank you, Rebecca. All right. So, at the time of joining the program, what did you want to change when it came to parenting, especially around social justice?
Well, I think that coming up with a common language, a common vision for what we're trying to accomplish through parenting, having kind of recognized we have really different experiences growing up around all sorts of boundaries and things like that, and being able to renegotiate that in between our experiences and rationalizing behind it while also being able to be extra vulnerable about it.
Mm. So negotiating what to do when it came to parenting. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, and just kind of aligning up on what is the thing that we're actually trying, what's the essence of what we're trying to advance when we are guiding them
I
in
agree.
ways, when we are deciding to control or change behavior.
That's a big one to negotiate. Yeah.
Yeah, especially coming from a like a biracial, I guess you want to say, background.
Mm, mm,
Like she said, we grew up in different kind of ways all around, and aligning on that and kind of centering what we both feel is important to pass on to our kids
yeah.
is
Yeah.
we talk about that by ourselves, but it's nice to have a community around that
Mm,
we could like also see it's like pretty much the same for other parents of
definitely.
any background.
Yeah.
Like we all just want our humans to be like loving, accepting, and like caring humans, right? We just want them to like do well, right?
Yeah. Exactly. And it's more fun to do it in a community,
True.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. And then how about the reparenting your own inner children? Anything you wanted to change when you came into the program?
Yes, I definitely was more I guess revert to the ways that I was raised and
Yeah.
things that I was taught as a child, and just trying to shape and mold. It's 2022, it's not 1984, not anymore. We keep progressing, so like the parenting must progress,
Mm,
ourselves must progress. uh,
mm,
so to have a fresh take on parenting, right, to have a fresh take on parenting my kids as opposed to having been taught for generations this is the way that we do it, kind of like you had mentioned, breaking apart from the cycle of what we were taught and kind of forging our own path, still
mm.
while honoring the path that came before us.
Yes. Not disrespecting our caregivers and all of that that you mentioned a lot. Yeah. Yeah. And that is so sobering to me, Charles. It's 2022 and it's not 1984.
That's right.
Yep. Yep. Definitely. Thank you.
Of course.
I feel like with my like inner child, I was going in because I definitely was wanting a more compassionate approach to tension, and what I ended up what I ended up learning about my inner child is like all the ways in which I have been accommodating and moving, and that were unhelpful to me because I early on was told that you needed to accommodate and move or change your way in this sort of way, and
Mm.
how to reflect that back and respect to what I am putting on them about what they need to be doing, how they need to be acting, or what choice they're making. And
Oh.
so, yeah, it was like a very roundabout way to get to compassion or feeling more compassionate, but it was like what you typically have to do, which is take someone else's perception more, and then
Wow.
also listen to your own, and teach and have someone else also listen to their own.
Mm.
Mhm. Mm. So, what I'm hearing, what both of you are saying is that you know the kind of parenting you're doing so that you're not repeating the cycles. And at the same time, Rebecca, what you just shared is then you know what not to project onto the little ones.
And try to.
Trying to, that's the key, right?
Yeah.
That's the key. Yeah. And how or why are these things important to you as parents?
I feel like as parents, as people, we want to do the best job, but especially as parents who are now responsible for people's lives now, you want to do the utmost that you can do. So it's of utmost importance. Also,
Mm.
in the eyes of my parents, I want to be seen as successful and like seen as like worthy, if that makes sense. So like when I do show them my children, they're like, well done. You know, they in turn they think they raised us well. So like we've done it, mom and dad, like we've raised them up well, you know what I
Mm.
mean? And to
Mm.
not have and to not have them look down on the like the style that we choose to parent, or just you know any of the tools that we choose to implement, and to
Yep.
have them accept us and have them
Mm.
accept our children, and to just have them um, you know
Mm. Yeah,
change.
those side eyes from our parents hurts.
Yes.
Yep. Mm. Anything to add, Rebecca?
No, I don't know if feels very resonant.
Yeah. Yeah. And what was getting in the way before joining the program for you to implement social justice in your parenting, talk about what's aligning for both of you that you want to do in parenting, or breaking the cycles?
I can go first. I can say that one thing that was getting in the way of with our situation, we had a live-in. One of my sisters lived with us, so it was
Mm.
tough for us to kind of align on our own separate terms, because we always
Mm.
had her in the background, kind of echoing what my family was echoing, and not just, hey, what do we want to? How do we want to get aligned? How do we want to figure this out? Because we know what my family's going to say. We know what your family's going to say.
Hmm.
How do we want to choose for our children? So like just kind of being aligned before, not that we were having trouble aligning, but it was harder to align with another presence, an adult presence who was very much involved in the kids' lives, right? And they loved her and she loves
Mm.
them and she's so
Mm.
helpful with them still to this day. But at the same time, being that like voice of, you know, you shouldn't, the voice of like you shouldn't, or the voice of you should, or the voice of do it this way, as opposed to us, like Rebecca said, trusting our own inner voices,
Mm.
choosing what we thought was best without, you know, caution of repercussion, or you know, side eyes from anybody's family.
Wow. So you literally had another voice echoing the things, some of the things that you might want to be breaking.
Yes, some of the things, and not exactly like she's a product of our generation as well. She was raised by my parents, so she knows some of the
Mm,
things and ways that we were raised that she doesn't want to pass on to our kids or any of the kids in our family. So it was, like I said, helpful because she's forward thinking like us, but also at the same time, she is still part of the whole family of our, our family. So it was like helpful, but at times it was tough.
mhm, mhm. And you lifted something up that's so interesting, which was both of you knew the patterns that you wanted to break,
Yeah.
but it's sometimes in practice really difficult to talk about it and aligning what you wanted to do.
Yes.
Mhm. So 6 weeks together, we've done a lot of things. So I'll recap real quick for myself too, and for the listeners. The first week we looked at systemic oppression and what it does and how it shapes parenting decisions day in and day out. And then week two, we looked at that impact on our nervous system. And we looked at how our body respond to stress and things like that. And then week three, we looked at, okay, how do we apply all of this into parenting so that we can kind of embed social justice into every parenting decision that we do most of the time. And then weeks 4 to 6, we apply all of that to our caregivers so that we put them in their context, where they came from. And Rebecca, to your point about compassion, we extend that compassion to our caregivers and all of that to heal that intergenerational piece while tending to our inner children. So that's what we did together for 6 weeks. Can you say more about the pieces that we did together that stood out to you and change your day to day parenting?
I can speak to the feeling of not being alone watching the
Mm,
other families um not struggle, but hearing their situation and hearing their journey was very comforting to me, in that it let us know that every parent and every family has their own struggles and their own challenges, but it's all, that's what we do. We face the
mm,
challenges and we learn from them.
mm,
So to kind of just be more to view this more as like a learning, and not, I remember I spoke about some of the like things that like must happen. It helped
mm,
me to kind of let go and be less rigid around that, and to like
mm,
kind of just go more with the flow and ours and their inner voices, and kind of just, like I said, to speak to the necessities at hand rather than the ones that I was, thinking in my mind or setting up in my mind that like had to happen, must
mm.
happen, due to parenting and things like that.
Yeah. So there were the must of parenting, of the rules that you were following, that you're trying to accomplish. Right. And then I think we teased apart where that must was coming from. Yeah. How was that for you to do that, Charles?
It was eye-opening, and especially around me understanding more about who I am as a person and why that I was
Mm,
so adherent to the musts. Um, it definitely it helped me, I guess, to be more I want to say compassionate, but more like open-minded
mm,
and more just accepting, as opposed to, no, this is the way, this line, this path is the way that we must all take. And I think also as a man, especially as a Black man, you're told that your family, your responsibility, and you're the one that has to do all these things for your family's sake. Um, so it took a lot of that pressure. It helped me to alleviate that pressure, basically, and help me to kind of accept my role graciously, and like, hey, yes, I am a Black father, and I do have a Black family, but at the same time, we're all learning, we're all figuring out together, us and the kids.
Mm.
So for me to disregard any of our feelings, you know, I should be more tapping into our feelings and worried less about the collective approach,
Yes.
right?
Yes. When you said pressure, Charles, it's almost like the pressure that society put on your shoulders, right? As a male, as a father, and as a Black man. And it seems like when you detangle those knots and you could name where that must was coming from, you could even almost like be more flexible and
Yeah,
have that compassion that you talked about.
flexible is the word. Yes, more flexible for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can make that decision of when to take that pressure off and when to put it back on, right? It's your choice.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Charles. Mm.
I feel like I got a good reminder about having habits and rituals as a way to kind of like anchor,
Mm.
and or draw importance to something. So it's like the way around kind of rethinking how we use time. And I also, I liked all the like extra like the tools, like those of course, because I like needed more poses for sure. I needed more vogues.
The
Um,
supermodel poses.
but also when I'm stressed out and I'm like, okay, this could be a pose. I can actually just be making this look better.
Sure, sure, sure.
uh, I loved ending with what do we something you're gonna take away and something you're gonna leave.
Oh.
A nice way to like show both gratitude and compassion.
Mm.
So
Mm.
that was lovely.
Yeah. Thank you, Rebecca. You keep coming back to compassion.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. I think so.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of my underlying feeling about how we treat children is that we're not respectful to them,
Mm.
and that is like the almost the very, very, very beginning or genesis of what can make it so that you're going to not be compassionate.
And it sounds like you want to practice that compassion for yourself so that you can pass that on to.
To
It's
the kids.
and it's kind of just like it also has to like go every direction and in.
Mm, mm, yes, every direction and in. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And you touched on the body based part a little bit, the supermodel poses. Right?
Mm.
So we have like a few activities that are body based in the program that we did together. Yep,
Mhm.
Charles, you're doing that. I love that. And then we did like Destiny's Child and take some quiz. Like, how was that for you to do that together?
I enjoyed doing it together because I mean we talked about some of these things before, but it was nice to hear her perspective. Like we were talking about our parents' perspective, it was nice to see her perspective as her inner child. I mean, I know her as she is today, but it was nice to see her inner self and like her younger version of herself and like where
Wow.
she comes from as a kid. I mean, we talked about these stories as a kid. You know, we tell each other stories about ourselves,
Right.
but when you kind of come to the realization of, oh, this is why I, you know, feel a certain way about nap time, you know, or this is why I feel like kids should be respectful to their parents. Like it kind of lets you see the like strip the layers back and lets you see kind of the core. And I enjoyed that to with you know seeing that with her for sure.
Yeah. And what does that look like in your day to day parenting together?
I mean, taking it slowly rather than you know trying to rush things, kind of letting the flow happen.
Mm,
You know,
mm.
I'm a huge martial arts fan, and a quote of Bruce Lee's that I always go to. She even reminds me is "Be like water," you know.
That's my favorite too.
love
My
it.
favorite
Be
too.
like water because it's the softest stuff on earth, right?
Yes.
It flows, but also at times when it's necessary, it penetrates rocks. So like be like water when the necessity arises, just like do what you need to do and like go with it.
Mm.
Penetrate a rock every now and again.
When you have to, when you have to.
When necessary.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So do you have like a new way of checking in with each other and say, hey, I'm seeing your inner child coming out, or I see you're being stressed and you need to maybe do some supermodel pose.
I don't know if there's a new way, but I think we're
Mm,
more readily to like help out, to help identify those, right? So maybe not necessarily like a new system that we're doing or implementing, but just a more a readiness to say, oh, like this is what's happening. The tension is rising. Like we need, and we've been good at it before, but I feel like now it's like we're like aligned. And like, yeah, we're getting tired. I the other day was like, I just need a break. I'm like getting tired like super quick, and I'm getting like irritated super quick. I easily, it was like readily identified as, whereas before I'd been like, I don't know, everything's going so wrong today.
Yeah.
So you have a way to, you already talked about these things and checked in with each other, but now it's more like it's just part of your rhythm.
I
Am I
think
getting that
it's
right?
easier to, for me, it's easier to like identify.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that it's like when you can agree on kind of the outcome or objective of what you're doing together, and the more alignment you have there, the less extra tension gets in the way of what is already probably plenty of tensionful or stressful situations. And
Mm.
so it's been like a release valve in that way also, of being like, okay, I don't need to worry about that.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
We've removed that thing from the realm of worry. And I was talking about cognitive load, right? And how that cognitive load can take you really away from being just present. And so being able to just constantly like take off those pieces that are not, they're like that are weighing you down, and being and there's so many, parenting is such a transitional identity, it's a recalibration, and so
Mm.
just like when newborns brains are going through whatever with the week 5 developmental leap, and they're really cranky because they're like, oh my god, this is so hard, I don't get it.
Right.
It's also just, parents are just giant babies is
Mm.
short.
With extra cognitive load.
That's right.
Yeah,
Right. And Rebecca, that recalibration is so beautiful because I feel like you recalibrate your identities as parents and you recalibrate your nervous system like all the time.
totally. And I was just reading something, or no, Dan Kaplan left a note on one of my thing about how when you become, the closer you become with someone, the closer your nervous systems will be in sync with one another. And when I was like that, I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much more sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious about, like Charles, when you talked about you checked in with Rebecca that, okay, you're getting really irritated now and you needed a break. After you did that, how did you show up for your little ones?
What were we doing in that day? That was the I had a show that day.
Mm-hmm.
So that day was kind of a hectic day. We were cooking and cleaning, and I was like, I just need a little break. And then they came out, and I had a work situation. She had a work situation at the same time, so we were both in our rooms, and the kids were just kind of like out here. And they got into a bunch of food, and they got into a bunch of clothes and toys, and just like, and like it was like
Ate all the fruit.
20 minutes, right? 20 minutes, just like
They just
A whirlwind.
I don't trust, I'm not gonna trust them as teenagers is all I'm gonna say. I was like, the
So
moment
like,
they were not being observed, I was
soon
like,
as they got, like,
woo!
oh, so that happened. And I feel like my normal go-to is to get like tens and be like, hey, we gotta clean this up. We can't do that. But like
Mhm.
instead, I was just like, all right, kids, let's get ready for bed. Like it was late. They were tired.
Mm.
She was tired. We were all tired. I was like, all right, kids, let's just get in the bed, and kind of just like centered the bedtime as the like main theme, as opposed to like trying to have a teachable moment and like, hey, we don't make messes in the house, and like we don't play with things like that.
Mm.
Where before, that would have been my go-to right away. Like, let's clean this mess up. Let's do this. Let's all these musts, right? We must clean up. We must get this clothes off the floor. But no, it's just bedtime and everyone's just really tired. So we must cool
Mm.
down, and make our way to bed. And I feel like we did a pretty good job of that night, because, like I said, every one of us was just like, we're so tired.
Wow. I need to let that sink in because that was huge.
I thought about the next day, and we talked about it. We laughed about it the next day, or maybe it was today. But I was like, yeah, you remember that huge mess that they made? Normally, I'd have been like steam out of my ears, but I was just like,
I just remember when we were in it. I remember at one point being like so mad and kind of like furiously looking up at him and then looking at him and he was looking at me furiously. And I was like, okay, like it was like when you're in a boat in a storm and two people are like, well, this is going to be
this is gonna
fucked up.
suck, right?
And then the other person's that way, and you're like, okay, I feel better. I'm not,
It's not just
it's
me.
not just me. We got to do this. Let's
We're
do
all
this.
feeling that tension. Everybody.
Wow.
We're like, okay,
That
I
like,
empathize.
yeah, that moment of just seeing that you're not alone in your frustration, right? It was so helpful. It's like you
Yeah.
co-regulated each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. That made me think of one thing you said, Charles, in our class together. You said something about focusing on the kids and not focusing them.
All right.
Do you
Yeah,
remember that?
just focusing on their need, right? In that situation, focusing on, obviously they're tired, so like let's get them ready for bed, as opposed to try and make them clean up your mess and pick up these toys and don't you do that again, right? Focusing them on whatever, as opposed to focusing on them. Like, oh, they're obviously, they're bored with each other or bored with whoever, so they ran around, did this thing, and then they
Mm.
were tired, right? So they're just like, oh, we need to get some rest, we need to get some sleep, and that's like we knew it of ourselves, so obviously we knew that the children, that they were tired and just needed to get their rest. So she was like, I'm starting bedtime, and I'm like, yep, we're all gonna do some bedtime routines, brushing teeth, flossing, wiping our faces, doing all these nap time things, bedtime things.
Mm.
And I feel like bedtime that night was a breeze.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, I feel like they were so tired anyways, but it was just like, normally they kind of like play around in their room, but I feel like they just went like pretty much right to bed that night.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, they definitely mirror us. And
Mm.
and if you just go with their energy or don't have to, if we don't have to like find a way to be in opposition with each other as much as possible, I feel like they just kind of like we can go along with things. And like, I know I'm gonna get them down to bed in the fastest if I can just turn off all lights in the house and lay in the bed myself. Because then
Mhm.
I'm just like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good, and it's a good reminder too, because I always struggle with getting myself to get more enough and more sleep. So I've definitely always I've appreciated the way in which I've had to reflect on my sleep hygiene through them.
Mm. Mm. Yes. You get to take care of your needs too,
Yeah,
teaching them to take care of their needs.
yeah,
Also,
Wow.
I think being comfortable with like taking care of your own needs, because a lot of society tells you like your children comes first, and they do, but you also need to be well in order to take care of that child. And you need to do things to make yourself well, and to like be okay with doing those things and not have any shame around doing those things.
Yeah. How are you getting there, Charles? Or how did you get there? Because I emphasize that a lot when I work with parents, that your needs matter, right? We talked about getting back to our own bandwidth first
Hmm.
and then help our little ones get back into theirs.
Yeah, I will say that there was this class honestly helped huge. Just being like, all right, obviously I'm frustrated, so like I need to not be frustrated so that I can help this child become unfrustrated. Because if we're just both bouncing back frustration, nothing's gonna happen. Just gonna blow up. It's gonna, a volcano's gonna erupt.
Mm.
Um, so
Mm.
like, but yeah, having the class and being like, our bandwidth is important for their bandwidth. So like,
Yeah.
it goes back to the postnatal care, like the mother's care and post childbirth is like directly linked to baby's growth and like, so like how well the mother is doing and recovering is like linked to the baby. So if the mom is like tired and stressed, and the baby's gonna like start to feel that too, right? So like same with us. If the parents are stressed out, it's gonna like bleed over to the baby. So like
Mm.
recognizing that and understanding that like I have tools to navigate that. I can teach those tools to these children. I should remember that and
Yes.
let the emotion take over in the moment because it's easy, you know. Easy.
Especially when you're tired.
You're tired, a
Mhm.
lot of work to do, a lot of laundry to do, toys to clean, like lots. It's easy. It's easy.
It's so easy to repeat those patterns that you're trying to break.
Hmm.
They're so familiar, right? Yeah. Mm. So back to that scenario that you put the kids to their bedtime routine and everything went smoothly after they were going through all the food and all the toys in those 20 minutes, right? And I was thinking, like, you checked in with each other and then you use, like, somehow it calms your nervous system down so that you could focus on the kids and not direct them to, like, do all the musts that you had been conditioned to do, right? It's like it's as quick as that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the ability to identify those things is like the hugest part of the battle.
Mm.
Because then coming back down to the bandwidth and like the realization of like, oh, we're like gonna focus on the babies. It's not that hard. Everyone, that's what we're all focused on. Like at the end of the day, we want them to succeed and grow and love and
Right.
nurture, right? So like identifying that disconnect was like huge for us, for me
Mhm.
especially.
Yeah. And you mentioned that it's hard to prioritize yourself first and not your kids, right? Because society teaches, put your kids first. And in doing the reverse or unlearning that, did it bump up against your inner child in some ways?
Um, Maybe gave me a little bit of guilt,
Mm.
thinking that like, oh yeah, my like when I was a kid, our parents let us hang out with like all of our other siblings on the weekends. We have older siblings that are like significantly older than us that have kids our age. So when we were kids, our parents did the same, but it's like, oh, I was like, why, why would they put us off every weekend? And we've done that
Mm.
multiple weekends, but it's like, oh, it's almost kind of necessary to like get you a break or just to get that like bandwidth back to like lean on the family, and that's okay. And there's nothing wrong with just being like, oh, can the kids sleep over? I'm just gonna like lay around and sleep all day because I didn't get a lot of sleep this week, or I'm gonna go to King Spa and get a massage because I'm feeling tense. Um, so maybe a little bit of guilt, but then again, it's like when you realize that it's like necessary, then all the guilt, like the realization of it's necessary, is way greater than any guilt, right? Like it's
Yeah.
necessary for my survival, for theirs,
Mm.
way more higher priority than the guilt that I may feel about,
Yes. Because you need that, right? To take care of yourself and each other.
yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
I feel like hearing it actually also there's like there's a weight that lifts off because it's like, oh, okay. this thing I have been feeling has been sort of off or not the way. And then, oh, this is really okay. My instinct was that this should be different or this should feel different. And then recognizing, there's another recognition I had, which is that the changes that we make in our parenting are much less about like what we have to say and exactly how we do whatever it is we're
Mm.
doing. And so guilt is just that extra cognitive load. It doesn't serve us. It takes us a little bit further out of our ability to be doing exactly what needs to be done
Right.
with its
Mm.
most
The action. Right, right, right.
yeah, the
Mm.
focus there. That's like that's actually like an unintentional like step away from acting.
Yeah. So the focus goes back to how you do things, how you parent and how you show up as parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's not
Mm.
necessarily that the words that we say to each other change, but the what we do and how we do it, that's what
Hmm.
changes.
Yeah.
The attitude around it has changed. That's like that, and that's like the background energy, the attitude of like what are we trying to achieve, and
Right,
what this day feels like, and what it feels like to like
right.
learn and make mistakes.
Sounds like discernment,
Yeah,
Yeah.
right?
yeah.
Yeah. And any example that you can think of, Rebecca, that it changes how you show up as a parent and show up to each other?
Yes. I mean, I think I've always been a pretty good listener, but it's upped my like listening skills
Mm.
where I've been trying to pay more attention to what is causing you concern, what is making it so that we're out of alignment, just being able to pay a little bit more attention outward
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
through just listening and trying to understand more deeply.
Yep. Yep. That's huge. Right? That's huge when you have meeting from work, you get called in and everyone's busy and trying to maintain that empathy for yourself and for Charles and for the kids. It's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. Okay. And how are you using the body-based practices or journaling or self-reflection in your parenting?
I just keep having a really hilarious image of myself yesterday because I was dealing with, corruption in the board of elections. It's fine.
Mm.
And I was like at the table and I was like so frustrated. And I just like remember like putting my head on the table and just pressing against the table and being like, oh, wait, I have some other tools I can use. And just like started doing like other body work because I was like, when somebody walked in the room, I literally just had my head flat down on the table. And then I was like, okay, wait, we gotta.
Rough day,
I
rough
was like,
day.
it made me laugh about the day too, because then I also kind of recognize sometimes when I'm doing these things with my body or I'm touching myself, I'm like, oh, you're having, because for whatever reason, I don't always like identify, well, no, I know why it is, because when we're very young, we're very much so taught that our emotions are uncomfortable for other people
Mm.
and that we need to hold it together, and which really isn't holding it together, it's just holding it in,
Right.
as opposed to figuring out how to resolve and release whatever that energy is by actually communicating with one another where that tension is coming from.
Mm. Yes. Yeah. And holding it in doesn't help, right?
No, no, right.
Mm-mm.
Doesn't help. Yeah. And now you have tools to address them and release them.
Yeah, or recognize them.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Rebecca. Yeah. How about for you, Charles? Self reflection, journaling, or body based
A
practice?
little bit of the self-reflection and the body base, I will definitely say in the moment. I just noticed that the tension normally falls in my shoulders. And that tension falls down to my back and to my knees and my hips after
Mm.
that. So like, and as a musician too, I feel like it's a little bit more pronounced because I'm holding an instrument, so I feel like just to even realize, oh, I'm starting to get tense. I'd get so painful before that I'd have trouble walking. Remember at the old house? my back would be so bad, and I was just like, I'm so tense, my back hurts so bad, and just I
Wow.
struggled for a couple of days. And now I'm like, all right, that tension is coming. I can feel it. I should like remember to like do my stretches and like, oh yeah, there's tension in my neck, right? There's tension in my back, and kind of just like realign.
Mhm.
Um,
Mm.
and like I said, just to reflect, you know, I've not never had really like bad pain, but it's always, you know, as a musician, you just get that. As a guitar player, you just get that where the strap hits or whatever. But
Right.
to be able to realize like when I was doing it and it wasn't so bad, and to like kind of chronicle and up until now, and kind of like
Mm.
remember the like journey and like, oh, I, you know, I became a dad, I've got family now, all these different things. So it's like all realizing that also helps to release some of the tension, you know,
Mm. Yes.
because it's
Yes.
part of that tension is, you know, not realizing kind of where you're at in the situation. So
Yeah. Like Rebecca said, that to have a tool to recognize it and
mhm,
catch it and then resource or reset before it gets to that point where you couldn't walk or anything
yeah,
like that. Yeah.
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 And before, I guess I just thought of it as just like pain, right?
Mm.
But it's actually stress that manifests itself, you know, as actual physical pain.
Yep.
And that's huge. That's a game changer, in the mind. It's
Oh,
a game changer. To you're like, oh wow, it's actually just, things that I can do with my own mind. It's a powerful thing. But there's things I can actually do and ways that I can actually think that will help me to like alleviate this physical pain that I'm feeling.
yeah. Yes, definitely. Our body communicates a lot, does a lot, right? Yeah. Have you used any of these body-based practices with the little ones?
Yes.
Naeem, yeah. Yeah, he likes that stuff. Well, no,
Yeah.
too Issa too. When they're like asleep, yeah,
Yeah.
he loves his forehead to be rubbed, or just like give him a little massage on his forehead. He'll go right. But I started doing that with Issa too on her back when
Yeah.
Mm.
she's asleep. Yeah, and she's like, but I don't want to go to sleep, and I'm like, I know you don't. And then just like give her a little back rub, and then she's like, I don't want to go to sleep. And then her eyes start to go like this. She's all tired, and I'm like, yep, sure you don't.
It's a win, 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 win for everybody, right? When they
Yeah.
go to sleep. Yeah. Hmm. And and then we apply all of this, right, to our caregivers, weeks 4 through 6. So how was that for you to like shift from parenting for social change to reparenting your inner child for this intergenerational family healing?
I found that much more difficult to access.
Mm,
I felt
mm,
like there were like even places where I was like, oh, I guess there's like a stone wall there. I guess I'll go this way because I was like, I can't generate a response to this, but it's kind of because I don't want to like go there.
yeah.
And then but then there was like the places where I'm like, all right, these are places where I'm like ready to like explore and travel and think about. That was
Mm,
very interesting to me because I would try to keep accessing these questions for different parts of different people I relate to, right?
yeah.
And so being able to like be like, oh, you got something going on there. Okay. Like that was just also a good kind of recalibration on all the relationships.
Yes. And I respected your pacing, Rebecca, because I think we were taught to just dive headfirst into the most painful memory, right? And I think that's not done with a lot of care or safety,
Mm.
Yeah.
right? So I think just what you shared, acknowledging, oh, there's some like friction there, there's a wall there. We'll put a bird on it, come back to it whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
Right? It's your own healing journey. It's your pace. It's your rhythm,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
I feel like the parenting my inner child is helping me to connect more with my kids. Uh,
Mm.
helping me to realize that like their kids and their needs are very important, and for me as an adult to not disconnect them from that. Like Rebecca said, kids are taught to like do as you're told, but to really help them like tap into their emotions and also their like feelings, and give them tools and ways to navigate those emotions and those feelings, because I didn't necessarily have those tools as a kid. I was taught, do as you're told, don't
Mm,
question anything, you know
mm,
um and it's just helping me to get more aligned with them, not aligned, but like it's helping me more to like, what I say, oh, connect.
mm.
It's
Yes.
better. Our connections are like a lot more like meaningful, and it's like, oh, I'm understanding. And they like, as much as I feel like they're tired and sick and tired of me because they see me all day long, they like ask about me. What did the boys say? I want to sleep in dad's
Like, I want
bed.
to sleep in dad's bed.
Oh,
You know,
We were at someone else's house, and I was waiting for him to come back. I said, "Just go to bed. You're tired." And he was like, "I want to sleep in dad's
stuff like
oh
that. And I'm like,
goodness.
oh, I know they're tired of me because they see my face all day, every day, and I'm like, hey kids, But this
Yeah,
connection, the connections are like more meaningful and like
that
easier.
connection. Yeah. So connecting with your own inner child, it gives you that meaningful connection with the two
Yeah.
kids right now. Yeah. Which again, memories keep coming back. You said you gave one example in class, Rebecca. I don't know if you remember this too, when Charles said that, you feel frustrated and something about, I feel frustrated too. And do you remember that?
bed." Yes.
Oh, like telling them that it's okay because like we all like I know that's frustrating. Like if Esau sometimes will try to untie her shoe and she gets a knot, she gets frustrated easily, and I'm like, oh no, I understand,
Was it?
but
Were we talking about swear words? Was it a time? Were we talking about appropriate use of swear words? Because I feel like this is like related to how I do that. So
maybe
I'm just like.
Oh, I don't remember swear words.
I don't think I
No,
remember
this
that.
reminds me though, but it reminds me of the same intention about how we don't allow kids to use swear words in appropriate context that we use swear words. So when we're like, well, shit. And people are like, oh, you can't say that. But I remember when them being like really little and then just being like, ah, shit. And then I was, oh, little baby, you frustrated. And then just not getting distracted by the word that I use when I'm frustrated. Um, and being able to relate to the state of frustration.
Mm.
Mm, yes, yes, that authentic expression, right? Yeah. Mm. Yeah, because I'm just thinking, when Isa can hear that you share that you're frustrated too, like that connection, right? It's so meaningful.
It helps her out, it helps us out, so
Yes.
that she can learn to navigate her frustration and
Yeah.
like refocus, repurpose that energy, right? So that she can actually help herself because she's very smart, she's very capable.
Mm,
But if there's like a little bit of pushback or like a little bit of struggle, she's like, nope.
yeah.
And I recognize that in myself, and I'm like, wow, I get frustrated. So for me to like explain that, like, hey, I get it, I get frustrated too, and this is how I try and get through that. It gives her the tools and the knowledge to help herself get through that.
Right, right. Oh, swear words or not, right?
Swears or not, that's right.
Swear words or not, for our kids to not feel alone when they're not at their best,
Right.
Yeah.
right? Oh, yeah. Mm. Okay, please finish this sentence for me. I almost didn't join the program because.
I mean, I just don't have time. I'm already
Yeah, I would
doing
say time
so
for sure.
much. I'm there. There's very few things that take me away from the things I'm working on right now because I'm in the midst of a campaign season. So going would be really hard at first. And then I get there and I'm like, oh, never mind. I like it here.
Oh, yay. Yeah, I know time, it's such a big commitment, and I don't know how else to do this work. So it was a big ask in
Doesn't
terms of
matter
time.
when it's going to be. It'll always be like an extra thing because it's, I think, a type of work we don't make space for.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mm.
And I think that's something that's so unfortunate because it's like one of those things that, if you're not able to do all these other things so great in your world right now because you're challenged by things that you don't even acknowledge you need to be working on,
Right.
you could have like we could have gained time
Mm.
being able to be better and more present there. So I think that like I also think, which is why when we got to the end of it, I was like, well, I really want to keep this like space on Wednesday or
Mm.
have more spaces where I'm like, this is kind of like the content of our like discussion or like more and that's where the again rituals and habits and routines
Yeah,
kind of come.
yeah. Mm. You're making time for this kind of inner work,
Yeah.
Yeah,
right?
prioritizing the inner work,
Yeah,
the outer
yeah.
work.
Hmm. So, how did both of you manage the time commitment piece to be able to show up and do this work together on Wednesdays?
A couple times we got a babysitter, and we were like, "Oh, that's cool. We don't have to worry about having the kids." But then even just like having the kids and just being like, "Oh, it's okay that they're here." Normally, I'd be like, "Oh, kids, go play, go do something." But like, no, it's not. They don't need to be away. They can like be in our laps. They can speak with anybody.
Yes.
They're speaking to it. They don't have to. So like that was kind of like towards the end of it, I was like okay with them just like sitting and like
Uh,
on Rebecca's head or crawling on
Yeah.
my legs or whatever. It's like cool.
yeah,
They're good.
right. You don't have to appear like a professional parent, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And for my selfish reasons, I want to see their faces because just adorable and fun. Yeah. Mm.
I remember it being really weird, funny when I first identified when we came to the first meeting. We got in a babysitter because we're like, okay, we're preparing to be present to be here, and then everyone has like their little babies and they're taking care of little babies, and you're like, oh, I remember when I was doing that, and that's also like the number one priority for me. I was like, it can also just still be the number one priority for me, and not like them just being there. That's good because I was really, really bold when I had Issa as an infant. I was like taking her to all the meetings. I was like, this is my infant.
Yes.
And I was like, very much like, they can be in any space that I'm in because they need to be
Anywhere
with
I'm
me.
welcome, they're welcome. Yep.
Yes.
So yeah, I remember that being like, oh yeah, if it's everybody, anybody could be here.
Yeah, and that's a societal thing. I feel like people kind of have you believe that like, oh, it's professional. You can't have your kids. It reminds me of this one clip. It's
Mm.
like right when COVID started, there was a guy giving an interview. He was British or something. He was giving this interview in his home, in his office, and you see the door swing open behind him, and it's his two kids and their mother. And one kid's in a walker, and one kid just like runs in, is like, "Ooh," and he's like, "Sorry." He's like, "Sorry," right? And the mom like
Yes.
grabs the baby, like drags the kid.
And
And
the baby was so
it
jovial
just made
coming
me
in.
think like why like who doesn't, he's at home, everybody's at home, so like
Right.
of course his
Right.
kids are gonna be there, and there's no harm in like his kids. He's like, oh, my son, even though it's like live TV, it's live news. No,
Look,
they're
he
gonna
got
think it's,
meme famous from
he
that.
got probably famous,
Yes.
like the overall attitude of people that are like, oh, you shouldn't have your kids on your personal work call with you. It's like, I don't know where else they're gonna be.
I know, right? And then like we keep asking who said that? Who set the rules? Who set the must that we are following like parents to be good parents,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
The other thing that made the time commitment easier was also just the versatility of how to join because there's like I feel like folks don't talk enough about like the cognitive weight of like being on camera or being on a screen and being able to
Mm.
sometimes be able to be off screen and just be like, I'm here, I'm just like that much
Not
amount
here,
here.
right.
Which is
You're
something
here, you're here.
already really depleted, and we're gonna dig into like a topic that's gonna like actually include some like added energy and effort. And so it was good to be like, this is just I'm a no camera moment right now, or no camera day, because I'm
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
tired.
Yeah, because our topics are intense too, right? Like it's a lot of unlearning and relearning, a lot of the things that we learned when we were little. Yeah, yeah. Okay, I have a few more questions left. One is, Oh, what's your favorite part of the program?
I love listening to and learning from you. You make it so fun. I feel like you have developed excellent camera rapport. Like you're just like very I was, I facilitate sometimes professionally. Uh
Yeah.
and folks don't let silence or time happen enough between conversation. And I love the long pauses where we're like, okay, we're gonna all think this through and things like that. And the way that you kind of gave us like permission to join or be however we need to be, whatever your body needs. I remember the first time we came on, and I remember like I was typing on my email or something like that. And I remember at one point you said, okay, so now everybody get whatever they need to start. And I thought we had already started, but I had started like multitasking. And then you said, get what everyone needs to start. And I thought, oh, I haven't even started. Like I was like, oh, I need to like, and then that made me think, okay, get something to drink and like step away. But also
Mhm.
like it was also very get whatever you need centric for this moment, for this day, for this period of time. So it was
Mm.
it made it easier to traverse into spaces where I had to like do some like work on things that were going to be like more like energy depleting or trying.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that exhale too, Rebecca. It's like, that's exactly what I wanted to create because you parent all day, work all day, and you solve problems all day, right? And I think it's such a shift to come into this space in our gathering and be a learner and be like making mistakes or not having all the answers. So, yeah, thank you.
See, my favorite was just getting to know the different families and getting to see their journeys. Um, we're all we see what we see, and we have our things that come along with our family, but it's nice to see everyone's it's like the same for everyone. Even the 2-week-old parents are like struggling, and like the 2-month-old parents, they're like, so they're doing the same, and we were there. That's the thing, you
Yeah,
forget because it goes so fast, you forget that like, oh, that was us, but now we have like our struggles are different, but it's like really they're all the same. It's just like
right.
we're at like different points in them. So it was
That's
good.
my favorite too, Charles, to see that, okay, we have like a 2 year old, 3 year old, 2 week old, two
Mhm.
month old babies, right? And then the families are kind of together. You know? Yeah, that's my favorite too.
I
Yeah,
can't believe we had a little 2 week old.
he's like 6 weeks old
I
now, right?
Yep.
know.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah,
It's such a gift to see someone at 2 weeks old. Only
Yeah.
a few people get to see 2 weeks old people.
right, right. I know. And with COVID, we can't visit, newborns, and it's just so nice to see them on screen. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah. And what kind of parents would you recommend this program to, and why?
I mean, every parent that I'd see, I'd recommend,
All.
yeah, any person that's a parent can use
I'm
this
already been like, all
information.
right, I need this person, this person. I've already told people, I'm like, you need to do this thing.
Oh.
Please, I do. I need it. There's like not a ton of great resources, cultural resources about like
Cultural
this
resources around
topic
parenting.
at all.
Yeah.
And it's such a massive
It's
societal
Eurocentric.
gap.
Our whole society is
Exactly.
Eurocentric, but like she's right. Everyone that's a parent, there's the information, the connection, right? The still I think for myself, and I think for everyone's family, it was like able to like be our own family and forge our own path, but still honor our family at the same time. I think that was huge.
Mm,
Um,
yes.
so everybody could use this, any parent ever.
Thank you, Charles and Rebecca, too, because it's not just about breaking the cycles, right? But it's still honoring
Yeah.
everyone that came before, too.
I wonder, do you do this to like parent age, like older couples? I know this is like a parenting like
Oh,
babies, or do you do this for like seniors, people like my parents' age? 'Cause that would be great. Because they would love, they maybe not love it, but
Your
like
mama will be pretty great on this.
they could
So
learn
she
a
would.
thing or two. Everybody can, right? We're not, and that's I feel like that's my point, is that like even in their elder prime and wisdom, like they
yeah.
can still learn. They can still be learners.
Yeah,
That's good. And
and
that's
I think they're going to be learning from both of you, right? Now that you take on all of this and apply with your kids, and when they babysit, you can model new behaviors that you want to show up as parents as. And I think that's what I love about this. That it's not just coming from me top down, but I teach from my heart, and what you contributed to the conversation is as important, right? So you go practice with them. And when I do classes for elders, we'll be facilitating that together. How about that?
Yes.
parenting class for elders, all about it.
Yeah. Let me go try that with my mom first, and then I'll come back
Let us
and
know.
report.
Let us know.
Come back and crying. Ah,
With our moms all
I
on
know.
a
I'm
Zoom
thinking
with
like
these
my mom,
questions.
your mom. Oh my gosh.
ooh, that would be quite a cohort. Quite a cohort. Okay, last question, I promise. For parents who are listening or watching this video, what would you like to say to them? Like one thing about decolonized parenting, embodied, body based parenting, or intergenerational parenting.
Mm, I would say it's okay to trust yourself, to trust your gut. It's okay to not, you know, be someone's child sometimes, and to like break off and be a parent that's like a responsible, loving, caring parent that like you know yourself to be the person that you are. It's okay to like trust that part of yourself.
Um, my thing is just that you like that we're not alone, that like we can like naming when we need help, hearing, being able to offer help, like being able to hear about needs, being able to articulate needs, all of these things are important parts of wellness that are really relationally based.
Mm, mm, mm. Yes. Self compassion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But together because it's relational.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Charles. This is such a fun conversation. I could go on for hours.
Same.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for this conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you.